How credible is the leadership of the Southern African Development Community, which is SADC, and of what importance is SADC's organ for politics, defense, and security cooperation? What were the key achievements of President Robert Mugabe's chairpersonship? Is the SADC grouping on track to implement a single currency by 2018? What time is it? It's question time. Welcome to Question Time. My name is Mpho Sid. The 35th Southern African Development Community Heads of State Summit has come to an end. The gathering held in Gaborone, Botswana, saw Botswana taking the role of SADC Chairpersonship from Zimbabwe. Mozambique took over the chair of the SADC Organ on Politics, Defense and Security Cooperation from South Africa. Notwithstanding drought and electricity challenges, there were declarations on youth development, regional integration, development, peace and security. A reminder that you can call us and air your views on the numbers on your screen, 089-110-4210, and if you're outside the borders, 0027-89-110-4210. Our Twitter handle is @QuestionTime24. My guest today, George Sibulela, who is the chairperson of the Black Business Council. Courage Mangwiro is an international relations and diplomacy student at UNISA. Before we get into today's discussion, let's hear what the new SADC chairperson had to say.
The current trade imbalances within the SADC region are reason enough for us to expedite and jumpstart efforts towards industrialization development, particularly with regard to the creation of value chains. In this way, the more industrialized, advanced economies amongst us can assist the least developed and small, vulnerable economies to leverage on them to also increase their productive capacities.
That was the President of the Republic of Botswana there. Dr. Sibulela, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us here.
Thank you.
Perhaps let's firstly just check from business side. When this summits happen, is there any interest really which you get out of this?
Yeah, I think firstly, thank you for the invite. Indeed, there is a lot of interest, simply because we, as South Africans, particularly in business, we operate in the global world.
Yes.
And Africa has now emerged to become what you call the emerging markets. And in fact, over time, we're going to see the whole world focusing specifically in the African continent because of the economy is still fragile. There's big opportunities. Mineral resources are large in this country. You heard from the incoming chairman, he was talking about industrialization.
Yes.
Now that's a very key word, because what we used to do in Africa, we would take a lot of minerals as a raw product outside the world. And when it comes beneficiated.
Yes.
And therefore, what is Africa going to do in order to fulfill the entire value chain?
Yeah.
And I think that's really the challenges that we have as leaders. And summits such as SADC is very critical to ensure that we achieve that objective.
But you also, talking industrialization in the SADC region, you're talking about a program or a project that would require in excess of $500 million.
I'm glad you asked that question, because when you talk investment, one way or the other, you will talk about capital raising, you'll talk about funding.
Yeah.
But bear in mind that we're not operating in isolation. If you notice, currently South Africa is part of BRICS. And you have heard that there's what you call a BRICS Development Bank. And some of our South African delegation or representative are sitting in the board of directors of BRICS. The president is leading that BRICS. So that's part of dealing with the funding requirement of all the African infrastructure requirements. So secondly is we have a lot of FDIs, which is foreign direct investment, that comes from member organization of BRICS.
Yes.
For example, the
Yes.
China Development
Yes.
Bank.
Yes.
You have China Infrastructure Development Fund. In Africa, you then have a fund such as the Africa Development Fund. In Russia, you also have a government funds. So all those need to be utilized to ensure that we achieve that objective in the African context. So I think it's going to be a challenge to make sure that there's a lot of collaboration, among within the African continent and the BRICS Council, to ensure that we achieve that.
Perhaps before I go to Courage,
Yeah.
if you were participants at the summit,
Yeah.
what was going to be your message?
My message would have been very simple, is that I think there's a number of challenges, obviously, around SADC countries. You have, a number of treaties have been signed, which are very critical. They open up markets, which is, countries can trade in a much bigger market. Secondly, the key would be to try and unlock all the bottlenecks. For example, issues like customs issues.
Yes.
It takes, much long, big paper trail, before one businessman move from one country to another. So those are some of the challenges that really we're facing. So my simple message in short would have been, we have good internal government policies. We just need to make sure that they comply with all the countries and the SADC objectives.
Okay.
I think that's the most critical message that we need to put forward. Because as long as we don't deal with those issues, you will still have countries resisting on changing their own internal policies to meet the SADC objectives. I think that dislocation will retract business in terms of moving forward.
A year after he had taken over as chairperson, I'm talking not necessarily in his personal capacity, but Zimbabwe having taken over the chairpersonship of SADC in the past 12 months. What shall we say is there to write home about?
Thank you, Mpo. A year ago, as you rightfully put it, President Robert Mugabe took over as the chairman of SADC, and a lot of things have been achieved during his tenure. Let me talk about trade within, SADC countries, especially. Countries have been trading in a manner that is expected. There was this cooperation, amongst Southern African nations, not only, limited to trade alone. Issues of security in the Southern African hemisphere have been excellent. You see, every time countries have to be wary of their borders, the internal security, as they are not supposed to be reluctant and think that they will be always at peace. So that, in that respect, also we've seen much progress. So I can actually say the way African states have been relating to each other has been excellent, and where conflict has been, especially also the issue that we had in other parts of Africa, not necessarily Southern Africa. Southern African countries have been seen playing very pivotal roles in trying to bring about, conflict, resolutions, and that really, the SADC has really been a cut above the rest.
Another organ, out of SADC, the Organ for Politics, Defense and Security, which was led by South Africa and now goes to Mozambique, is something, I think, which is of interest in that it was supposed to have gone to Lesotho the last time.
But offering from this maker of measurement systems and equipment.
South Africa came in Now,
This device allows fishermen.
Perhaps that chairpersonship of that subcommittee
another thing
go to Lesotho. It now goes to Mozambique.
Yes, definitely. It is because the present moment, Southern Africa and the whole of Africa is still working to find lasting peace resolutions in the Lesotho Republic. As it is now, I cannot, or no one can really openly and confidently say Lesotho is ready for that post. You see, they have this internal problem that has to be resolved first, that concerns security. So for them to be seen again being them who are actually, trying to guard against, insecurities and stuff like that will be not a good option. So for now, that's the reason why Mozambique has chipped in, you see, and with a view of ultimately managing to, nab this problem that Lesotho is facing. We have seen, peacekeepers that have gotten to Lesotho since the time Lesotho got into this, political crisis. They are still there. They are still trying to manage, and also diplomatic, steps are being taken as it is now to try and bring the, two warring sides to level grounds. The Vice President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, is in charge of that. Southern African countries are, using him as a mediator, and we really hope that very soon Lesotho will be back to normal and also be able to also operate as any other Southern African countries.
Okay, I want us to take a quick break. When we return, we'll be taking your calls 089-1104-210. If you are outside South Africa, 002789-1104-210. Our Twitter handle @QuestionTime24. What did you think of the summit? Are they useful in any way? This is Question Time.
In Africa, mobile devices are tools to make payments, browse the internet, and keep governments in check with social media forums.
It's given an average African too much power in their hands.
And tech creativity is solving some of the continent's problems.
Everything is internet driven.
And on Network, we tell you how Africans are using technology and social media in their everyday lives.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. Before we continue, let's listen to what the Namibian Prime Minister had to say at the SADC summit.
We must act with a sense of urgency to ensure that value addition becomes the mainstay of our economies. Exportation of raw materials simply means exportation of jobs.
That is the Namibian leader there. My guest today is George Sibulela, who is the chairperson of the Black Business Council, BBC, and Courage Mangwiro, who is an international relations and diplomacy student at UNISA. We'll be taking your calls on the numbers that will be on the screen right away. 089-1104-210. If you're outside South Africa, 0027-89-1104-210. What did you think of the SADC summit, and what do you think of the chairpersonship of President Robert Gabriel Mugabe, who just handed over the reins to Botswana's President Khama? Now, the single currency has been mooted for quite a while. Is this something that really may bring some relief to SADC?
It is indeed. You have noticed what Europe has done on the Euronext. it has worked very beneficial for the some of those European countries. And I think if we really want to reach that stage, I think that will be the best solution to look at.
Well, I mean, Europe, Britain is not in the euro itself.
Well, there's a way to start. I think the unfortunate scenario is our economies are not equal within the African continent. I mean, the recent example is in Zimbabwe. So, but there's somewhere to start. If we believe we can be able to achieve, just like the Chinese are doing now, where they believe they would achieve the same, single currency to be able to beat the Americans. And that's really where we start. Once we have that currency, it gives us the muscle to be able to trade on our own.
Is China good news to Africa, or let's say to SADC, to South Africa?
Yeah. There's a number of the goods and the bads around the discussion. And one of those discussions that probably we believe in business, particularly on developing economy, it's how do we begin to achieve a scenario where we become an industrialized economy. But if you look at China, it has developed a lot of manufacturing facility or industrialized environment such that we now have become consumers in Africa. So the majority, if you look at the import numbers of what we import in China, is quite huge, which is in fact the number one, country that we import goods from. So therefore, the challenge for me is that how do we begin to become an industrialized countries if we consume imports? So we need to balance the two. So it can only be good if we restrict to say we will industrialize Africa, but we will take the goods back to China. So China could be the biggest consumer because by way of population and economy. So hence I'm saying it's a 50-50. But bear in mind also that they've got a lot of capital. They've got a lot of technology. So there's a lot of benefits for African countries. So when they come and fund our project with a view of taking the same goods and services. So there's a lot of spin-off that we can see in that regard.
I'm going to just put you right within the confines of Zimbabwe. Has China's presence improved the lives of ordinary Zimbabweans?
Oh, yes, it did. Since time immemorial, when we were working with the Chinese, we have seen some improvements, really, in certain industries. For example, in mining, in your agriculture, where they were, participants in our transport network. It has been excellent. But bear in mind that it is not only China within Zimbabwe that's playing a pivotal role when it comes to trade. There is a vast number of foreign countries that have complied with our foreign policy and are working with us in harmony. And even though our economy has not reached where we want it to reach as yet, we really do have this picture of a prosperous nation within a short period of time. So I could say it really, since the Chinese started working with us, there has been progress. I know there's this notion of saying most of the time is them who will be benefiting more than the country
not
they are
in
working
Zimbabwe.
with. Not in Zimbabwe. Why am I saying so? There are set rules and regulations where we come to agree as to how we are going to be working, how we are going to be benefiting from the proceeds of whatever business is being undertaken. So really, in a nutshell, it is quite beneficial to work with China as one of the actors in trade. So African countries should not have this negative thought to say the Chinese are there to exploit and the governments are allowing them to do so. It is not like that. The governments have to first of all have a plan of their intention, actually, how they intend to work with the Chinese, and then they come to the party.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, does this cooperation within SADC at government-to-government level, does it filter down to institutions like the Black Business Council, where you would say we have, well, I don't know if, for instance, in Zimbabwe there's a need for something to be called black
indigenization.
Yeah. But the Business Council in Zimbabwe, or in Namibia, and all that.
Yep. Maybe let me give a context of, and I think it's a little bit of a misnomer. It's good that you ask that question, that a lot of people would have. Black Business Council, it's business. It's just that it's such a coincidence that it was started here in South Africa at the back of empowerment and transformation. But business, if you are in business, you are in South Africa, you have to know what happens in your country, in your continent. You have to know what happens globally. That's business. So black business represents the interest of black business organization and professionals, just to make sure that we transform and make sure that they participate in the mainstream of the economy.
Okay.
But the economy is in South Africa, the economy is in Africa, the economy is in the world. So therefore, SADC is one such a very important part of the economy. So I think it's critical to note that it has a direct impact to the economy, and hence the participation of and the interest of Black Business Council in that aspect.
Yes. Yeah. So, is there a council to council relationship?
Well, what often we have done now is that we often form part of the foreign missions of International Relations Department.
Okay.
We work very closely with DTI. So as we visit African countries and states, same as we visit the international, whether Asia, Europe, and US, it will be on a similar basis.
All right, hold the thought there. We've got Thabo. You're calling us from Pretoria. Thabo?
Hello, Mpo. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Mpo, my concern is that our African leaders, they are very good when it comes to talking. But when it comes to implementing all these issues that they talk about, they are very slow. So how can the panel assist in ensuring that our leaders, every time they talk about all the radical changes, things happen in a quick way?
Okay. Thanks very much. Indeed, resolutions are taken at each and every summit.
Yeah. Look, I think it's a very good point. I've started with the same point to say often implementation take precedence over what policy you have put together. So therefore, we currently, as Black Business sits as on the panel of Presidential Advisory Group, and these are some of the issues that we raise on a frequent basis, and we do have a channel. I think we push. That's the process we can utilize, and I think it's been very effective now in terms of communication between business and government at this stage.
Okay. Courage, quickly, immigration laws. SADC has not opened its borders to each other.
I do not think it's high time they did that. A lot of work has to be done prior to that very important action. It is going to be very easy within the Southern African countries, trade and movement free, but security precautions have to be, really taken care of first before we do that. Otherwise, we'll be shooting ourselves in the foot. So really, that has to be, done. And I hope it is going to be implemented before we even think of doing that. Going back to what the last caller said, it is saddening that summits are held, talks are done, but the implementation really is not feasible. I'm personally disappointed with SADC because it's an organ that I thought would really pull resources together, pull their minds together, and pave way for the success of not only Southern Africa but Africa. But it's all talk and no work done. Unfortunately, they leave everything ironed out. There is bad leadership. There is corruption. They work with presidents that are corrupt, that are kleptocratic.
Okay.
And nothing is said. But us, the rank and file, are looking at that. It's saddening.
Okay.
It is pain.
I wish you had raised that point when we started the program. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
That was question time for today. Have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.